Simply not good enough was the best way to describe Saturday's defeat to Wigan Athletic at the Keepmoat Stadium. As each game goes by, the need for a win gets greater and greater, with Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank's Burton side providing Rovers with the next chance to get back to winning ways. It's Rovers against Burton from 7 p.m. Good evening and welcome back to the Keepmoat Stadium, and thank you for joining us for our pre-match build-up to the game against Burton Albion in Sky Bet League One. Joining me on the show, editor of the Free Press Liam Hoden and supporter liaison officer Dean Metcalf. Liam, in the past 24 hours, only really one place to start. Rovers have put a statement out saying that they are now welcoming applications for the managerial job. What do you reckon to that?
I think it's a really good move, to be honest, to ensure that the club can really hit the ground running this summer. There's the new talent identification manager to come in as well, and they're giving themselves the best possible chance to have a really good summer of good recruitment, solid foundations to build towards next season. I think we've seen over the last few weeks that things aren't going too well at the minute, but this will get them off. If things continue not to go well this season, at least they will be heading into the summer on really, really sound footing. And
of course, Andy Butler can apply for the role. It's very much said in the statement that it is a results-based business, and he will know as much as anybody that in these final 8 games, if he's serious about wanting the job, he's got to pick up results.
Certainly has. He's been analysed on all manner of things, how he's dealt with the injury situation. Obviously there's been various issues that have been talked about in terms of motivation and things like that. This is all sort of counting towards his own case towards to getting the job on a permanent basis. But as you say, number one thing is results, and they certainly need to be turned around.
Dean, I think the worry amongst fans was that it was going to drag on a little bit and then the process wouldn't start until the end of the season, and all of a sudden you're playing catch up, aren't you? But does this just put people's minds at ease that the process has already started?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you look back and look at the times when Darren Ferguson left and when Grant McCann left, it was quite, coming towards that pre-season stage. So when you go through that process, you're then looking at the back end of pre-season, which isn't always great. So to start now, you're hoping that somebody's going to be in time for the pre-season. Even if possibly, the candidates might start looking at the team now, working out who they want to keep, who they want to get, and which areas they might want to improve on. So I think it's a perfect timing for it to happen, yeah.
Do you think it's big for the players that are going to be here next season? Because although they don't know who that new man is going to be, they've got to put on a good show, because that can determine whether or not they're in the manager's plans or not. Exactly,
they've got to show something, haven't they? They've got to play for that position next year. They've got to play to be here next season. The new manager might not be here or chosen in time for the end of the season, but like I said, people will be watching. If they are going to apply, they'll be watching the games. So them players have really got to step up now.
Fans have got their opinions on whether Rovers should go for somebody without a job at the minute or with a job at the minute, saying we should go and headhunt people. But the key to remembering that is if you go and headhunt somebody, they're then willing to be headhunted, aren't they? So that can then happen again in 6 months, in 12 months, and then Rovers are scratching around for a new manager once again. So you've got to be very careful at times.
Dean Saunders is a perfect example. We headhunted him from Wrexham. He got headhunted by Wolves. It's going to happen. Clubs in this league and in League Two, the managers, if they have a good start, if they have a good season, they're going to get headhunted, just like the players. So, when someone comes in for your manager, what do you do? If they want to go, then they're going to go, aren't they? But yeah, it will happen. But I just hope that the next guy who does come in does want to stick around for a bit longer.
I think that was the thought with Darren Moore, though, wasn't it, Liam? There was a genuine expectation that Darren was going to be here for maybe not long term, but medium term at least, and had plans in place for how he saw the club developing. But as Dean says, at this level, there are bigger clubs at higher levels who are always going to come and poach you if you're doing well.
Yeah, everybody's got a certain place in the pecking order. That's just a fact. Whether you're a top Premier League team, there's clubs in Europe that are higher in the pecking order than what you are. That's just a fact of life. And the thing is, you've got to kind of ride the wave of success. If a manager comes in and brings you success, you've got to maximise as a club the most that you can get out of it. Unfortunately, Darren went before the end of the season, before we could perhaps see if that success were going to be ridden. But you've just got to get on with it.
The board are very specific about what they like in a manager and what they look for when people are applying, and that's brought them, as we said, hasn't it, success over the past 2 or 3 appointments?
Yeah, certainly the last 3 appointments really where this has been applied. Darren Ferguson being the first one, followed by Grant McCann and Darren Moore. All three have had success at this club. So as a recruitment sort of process to hang your hat on, it's not a bad one at all.
The man in charge now, Andy Butler, was pretty honest, wasn't he, after Saturday's performance against Wigan? That Rovers have been struggling in recent weeks, but that just about topped it off, didn't it?
Yeah, as you said at the start, simply not good enough. And you do feel for Andy in this scenario, because he talked about the build-up, he talked about seeing better from him in training and being really positive heading into the weekend, and that view has been echoed by players as well. They expected better, but the players ultimately didn't deliver. They've let the manager down. He won't say it himself, but they have. And they've let him down on numerous occasions, but I think that was the worst of it on Saturday.
Tom Anderson admitted afterwards, Dean, that Rovers were lucky there were no fans in the stadium on Saturday. Give us a bit of an insight as to what was going on in your front room as the afternoon was developing.
I find myself every Saturday afternoon and every Tuesday evening saying to my granddad before a game, well, we can't play any worse than we did last game. And then we do. It's as... I just can't work it out. The players have lost all confidence now, in my opinion. You know, Saturday was just embarrassing, and that it's as simple as that. You know, we get players back from injury who you think is going to give us that bit of a spark, but then you go 1-0 down in less than 2 minutes, and the whole confidence goes again. I said before the Bristol game we needed an early goal, or we needed the first goal, I think I said, and we got it. But then it just I don't know what happened after that, but. On Saturday, it just got worse and worse and worse. You know, you could see the confidence draining out of the players as every 5 minutes went past, and it was absolutely dreadful.
The word desire's been used a lot, hasn't it, in recent weeks? Andy Butler's been speaking to the press in the build-up to Tuesday night's game, and he says desire should never be questioned as a professional footballer.
I don't think you should ever be able to question a player's commitment and desire to once they cross on that white line, especially when they're representing Doncaster Rovers, which is a fantastic club, and the fan base around. I don't think you should ever be questioned as a player. And if people are questioning you now, then you have to look deep inside yourself and think, well, I'm not doing this for me. I'm not doing it for the right reasons, and you have to get something from this, whether it be for financial gain, whether it get for family reasons, personal pride. It's got to mean something to you. I think Jimmy Floyd-Hasselbank's gone in there and turned the club around from when we played them early on in the season. They were everyone thought writ them off, but you use that again for you to use as a tool to spin it around and put it in a positive mindset. Everyone writes you off, and you have that little run. And now Burton are doing extremely well, and they have done well. And that's what my challenge is to the players now. People have written you off. Can you turn it around and use it in a positive way and put in results on the table for us all? I expect nothing more than a tough match, and the players that we played against at their place earlier this season did well, and we were fortunate to come away with a win there. But again, I want to concentrate on my side and how we approach the game and what we do well.
Liam, you could see how much it had hurt Andy Butler on Saturday when you were speaking to him up there. Is it difficult for you as well, because you've known Andy Butler for so long, working with him, to have to ask those difficult questions? It is your job, isn't it? But it is difficult because you know that he's given everything. It's just not coming off on the field of play.
That's it. You can, in terms of effort, that he's the one man that you can't fault at all. And it is hard. You see how delighted he were when he got the job, got this opportunity. I mean, the buzz around the place, but particularly from him, was incredible. To see it not go well has not been. It's not been a pleasant viewing experience. It's not been a pleasant when you sit across a man who you can see is really shattered by what he's seen on the pitch, and asking those tough questions. As you say, they've got to be asked. And fair play to Andy. He's fronted up to every one of them.
And he is honest, isn't he? He's gone away from questioning desire, and as he said in his interview there, that at times when things are going wrong and people are saying that the other team wanted it more, you simply have to question it.
You certainly do. And I think for me that the squad should take a look at what he's said over these last few weeks. And the fact is, he could have easily thrown a few of them under the bus. He could have thrown them under the bus as a complete group, and he's not done it. He's got their backs, certainly in public, and he wants them to produce, and he still has faith in them. I believe everything that he says in terms of what he's so honest, and he's always been like that when he was a player, and certainly now as he is as a manager. He believes that they can turn this around. He believes them players are capable of turning it around. I think they owe him a few favours in terms of producing that and delivering on that faith that he's got in. And
one player he can always rely on, and I think he said this after the game, that he's not the prettiest footballer, but you can always rely on him to give 100%. That's Tom Anderson. And he was pretty honest, wasn't he? Andy Butler, as you said, is always measured with what he says, but Tom spoke, you could tell it was from the heart, and admitting that his performance wasn't up to the usual high standards. But that's what fans want to hear as well, someone who will come out and speak honestly as captain.
You saw it there were an occasion where I think sort of not his aggression got the best of him, but his frustration, should I say, got the best of him a little bit. You don't often see that from Tom Anderson. He's very businesslike, goes about his business really, really well. And I think that just told. I think he could see what was going on around him, and it built, and it was hard. There were other players as well, Joe Wright, that you also saw that from. They can see what's not happening, and it must be incredibly difficult to not let your frustration boil over at times. But as you say, Tom Anderson, so reliable, and I think he's the perfect captain through this period.
Dean, Andy Butler was asked after the game if he'd considered playing himself during this period, and his answer was simple, that if he's serious about getting the manager's job, he simply can't take his eyes off that position.
Yeah, I think he has to. If he wants a job, he's got to stick to being in the technical area. Fans loved him as a player. He would stick his head where no one else would. He's a leader on that pitch, and I think he spoke, or somebody spoke in the week, about how it was probably good that Brandon Horton had Tom Anderson next to him. Well, I think for that back four, it does help when Andy Butler was in there, because he could talk them through the game, and if they were struggling, he would get them back on track. Yes, he should be able to do that from the technical area as well, but it's not always as easy as that, because you're not actually playing the game. If he wants to be the manager, he's got to stay in the technical area. As much as we would love to see him on the pitch and showing that passion, he's got to stick to what he's doing now.
Do you think it would make a difference, Liam, having seen the way the performances are going? And I know it's not necessarily, with exception of maybe Saturday's result and the trip to Oxford, Rovers haven't been hammered really too often under Andy Butler. Would his presence on the pitch make a difference, do you feel?
I think it would, to be honest. I think Andy's the type of player, like a Tom Anderson, where confidence never seems to come into it. They're so assured in what they do. Even they don't look rattled even if they go through a bad period. And I think he's shown this season that the impact when he came in, it was superb. I think it would make a difference, but I can fully understand what he's saying. If it opens him up to criticism, if he goes out on that pitch, things still don't go well. They go, well, you were needed in the technical area. So, difficult choice. To be honest, I would like to see him back in there, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I suppose it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Definitely. He also made the great point when he was asked about communication on the pitch, and how at one point the only two voices he could hear was Tom Anderson's and Paul Gerrard's alongside him, and the fact that he'd made a career out of not necessarily being a brilliant technical footballer, but his organisation skills as well. And when you can hear 11 Wigan players all talking to each other and only one outfield player for Rovers doing it, there then lies the issue.
Certainly does. I think it highlights a little bit the youthfulness of the squad. I think it's one of the sort of impacts of losing Ben Whiteman in January. You had a player in the middle who was very vocal and could help people around, particularly the younger lads around him. Something that Rovers perhaps need to address this summer, and get more leaders. You think everybody always harks back to the 12-13 team, the team that won promotion to the Championship. But whatever anybody speaks to, anybody who were part of that team, they all say it were a team full of leaders. Rovers need a few more of them, I think, at the moment.
And Dean, when you look at the teams who are still at the top of the table and who've lasted the pace, the top three, Hull, Peterborough, Sunderland, they're all full of those experienced players who've been there, seen it and done it, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And you talked about Ben Whiteman. The one player who I thought would have stepped into that role was John Bostock. He's got the experience, he's been around. You'd have thought he'd be the one in that midfield, trying to boost the confidence of players and try and, grab them by the scruff of the neck and drag them through the game. Unfortunately, it's not happening. Tom Anderson is a leader. You sit at home, you can hear him on the TV shouting. When Butler when fans were here, you could still hear Butler shouting on the pitch. But there's not enough of that happening. and we need more of it. And they just need someone just to help them, drag them through that game, like Rob Jones always used to say.
Of course, we mentioned injuries the other day as well, and of course James Coppinger and Reece James separately, of course, one before the game, one during, both suffered knocks, and it's just getting harder and harder, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, you see another one go down. It's just, Reece James, I mean, that was just shocking. that impact of that ball on his face were absolutely shocking, and there were no way we were going to be able to continue after that. And you just think, that's where it's hard not to feel sorry for Andy Butler in terms of, the injuries that he's had to deal with one after another. It's stopped. And there's a lot of people talking about how many changes have been made, but they've had to be. They've had to be, simply because there have been players been going down with injury, and it's so difficult at the moment.
Now, Joe Wright's not the type of player to hide away when things get tough, and he says he and his Rovers teammates need to start doing themselves justice on the pitch.
It's up to us as players. You can be given everything that you need for the game, but if you go out there and we don't do that, then we've only got ourselves to blame, really. So I think it's up to ourselves as individuals, as human beings, as men, just to look at ourselves in the mirror and just say, are we doing enough, really? And in this moment in time, you can't say that we are. So we've got to change that. We've got to work hard. We've got to get back to what we are good at, which I've no doubts we'll be able to do. If you look how Burton have done, then I think that should give us a little bit of encouragement ourselves. Burton have been in a run similar to what we are, but if not in a worse position, and they've managed to turn it around. They've now one of the form teams, you could say, and they're on a good run since the new manager's come in. So I think we've got to take some encouragement from that ourselves and look at it from our point of view. Why can't we do that? Why can't we go on a run and put ourselves right back in the mix?
Liam, another honest interview from a member of the Rovers playing staff, Joe Wright, who almost let his frustrations get the better of him on Saturday. And that's a sign of how tough things are at present.
I think it is. I kind of spoke about it a little bit earlier with Tom Anderson at times, but yeah, Joe certainly did at that point. And again, it must be so difficult being out there and seeing how not right, how wrong things are going. At the minute, and he's got that passion and that commitment that you can't question either, Joe Wright. As you say, open and honest about the situation, and he'll be so desperate to turn it around.
One of the main questions from fans on social media and everywhere else that you look, Dean, is who is this really hurting within the playing staff? And two players who've come out recently and fronted up in front of the media, Tom Anderson, Joe Wright, what have they both got in common? They've played alongside Andy Butler for a good few years, so they know him as well as anybody, don't they? So that's why it's hurting them as much as anyone. Yeah, and there's a few players in there as well. I mean, you've got to throw Cops into that. We've seen it the last couple of weeks where the players have sat in the press box and they've talked about, they need to start showing that leadership and they need to start, putting that effort in. But then they walk onto the pitch and it's not always there. So, they either need to start being a bit more realistic in their interviews, or they need to get on the pitch and start showing what they're talking about. It's just so difficult to watch. As a fan, I've been coming down here for many, many years, and this is one of the worst patches I think I can remember. Not the results, just the performances. And you're right, Joe Wright, Tom Anderson, they've played alongside Andy Butler, like Reece James, like Cops, and it's got to hurt them to see the stick and the abuse that Andy's getting on social media, which I'm not a fan of at all, by the way. But it is there, and they need to go out there and they need to start showing why they want Andy to stay here as manager. And the one thing to remember is that Andy Butler will come out the other side of this better and stronger for it, won't he? Whether he's the man in charge next season or whether he's not, he will be a better manager for having gone through this spell. He'll have learned a tremendous amount from these last few weeks. Tremendous. He's had an awful lot to deal with, and if he goes on and becomes a manager in the future, I mean, he may well be here next season as manager, he probably won't have had a spell as tough as this in terms of the injuries that he's had to deal with, in terms of the amount of games, game after game after game, not being able. This is a big thing for him. He's not had that time on the training ground with the players at all, barring these last couple of weeks. But arguably the issues have really taken root now. The issues that he'd have liked to have nipped in the bud a few weeks ago. He's not had that time on the training ground. As I say, he's not going to have a period as tough as this. This will
this could make him as a manager, even if it's not necessarily right now.
Dean, you said it's as bad a run as you can remember in terms of performances. Joe said in his interview that he can't really remember a time when they've gone through such a rough patch since he's been here, and it's a good 5 seasons or 5 years now since he joined the club.
Yeah, I think he joined the season after we'd been relegated from League One under Darren Ferguson. Now, that weren't a great spell. I mean, that was 17 losses, but every time you kind of still went to those matches kind of expecting, to get a result. Whereas at the moment, I don't really see that. You still had people in that team who were putting the performances in. I think we had Tommy Rowe at the time who would just come in on loan. I think his first game was away at Crewe, I think I remember. He put a good shift in and he put a great performance in. But you're not seeing that from anyone at all in this team. And that's the bit that's really frustrating.
Burton Albion then, the test tonight. What do you make of them? The last time Rovers played them, they looked pretty nailed on for being right down there for the whole season, didn't they? But a change of manager for them. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank came in on New Year's Day, and their form since then has been up there with the best in the division.
Yeah, I think they are actually one of the top form teams in the league. And to go to Portsmouth on Saturday and get a result there, that's a great confidence boost for them. It's dragging them away from that relegation zone more and more. It's going to be a really tough game tonight.
Liam, I think it's 35 points from 17 games since Hasselbank's gone back in there. Sometimes it just works for a certain manager at a certain club, doesn't it? It's had spells at QPR and Northampton since his first spell at Burton. Didn't really work out for him, but he's really hit the ground running since his return.
He's picked him up off the floor. I mean, I said quite a few times this season that I didn't think there were any no-opers in League One, and then we went to Burton. And I thought, that as you said, this started nailed on for relegation. What he's managed to do there is incredible. Absolutely incredible, and they'll be looking to keep that going right through to the end of the season. This is going to be a massive test tonight.
They're 10 points, I think, above the relegation zone now, which just gives you that momentum heading into next season. They're unlikely to be dragged back into it now with 6, 7, 8 games remaining for all different teams in the division. But for them, they'll be looking at this game tonight and thinking it's a good chance for them to extend that run.
Definitely. They'll be looking to really kick on, and Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank will be looking to get Burton back to where he had him before we left the first time around. So some players really, as I said, pick themselves off the floor, and they'll be looking to sort of stake the claim to be part of that into next season.
Are you going to stick your neck on the line and have a brave prediction for tonight?
I keep going wins, and I'm still convinced that Rovers could give somebody a pasting this season. I don't know why I'm still convinced, but I think it's probably going to happen. I'm not sure it's going to happen tonight. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Dean?
0-0.
Liam, Dean, thanks for your company, and thank you at home for watching as well. Head over to I Follow Rovers now as Rovers take on Burton Albion from 7 p.m.